We got an exciting episode ahead of us. It's the Autonest. And in the end, it's a little bit of common cut line as well. This episode is an episode that if I were in your shoes, I would listen very carefully and I would train like hell after I watched this. Because the Autonest, together with the common cut line, of course, is a command where you can save a lot of money, a lot of material, a lot of time, a lot of money. Do I need to say more? Let's get going. All right, I think you kind of know the drill by now. Let's open igems, open in samples, and open the Autonest-01.dig. If you don't end up in the samples library when you press samples, it's located under C, program x86, igems, and the version that you have, res, and then samples. So let's just open this, and it contains 4 sheets and a lot of parts. So you can double click on a part on the edge here. You can see that it has a name, it has a quantity. Yeah, it's got a lot of things here. And you can also do that by clicking on the sheet. So you get some information about the sheets. We want to nest these parts onto these sheets. And the best way to do that, most efficiently and the quickest way, is to use our Autonest, which is right here under the tab Nest and Auto. So I click on that and it asks for parts. I can either just hit enter or done if I don't want to select any parts, or I can select these parts. So I select them. I can click on done. Now we have to select sheets and obstacles. Well, these are our sheets, so we can select them. But let's say we had an obstacle. Let's say maybe you've already nested on this sheet. So if there were parts on here, we could select those as obstacles and the nest would recognize them and wouldn't put any parts on there. So we've selected our sheets, done. And if we haven't selected any machine or material by now, we will do it right now. So we select our igem CNC machine, these cutting parameters, stainless steel, standard quality, 10 millimeters. Looks great. So hit OK. And that will open our Autonest dialog. And there are a lot of settings here, but don't be scared. So this is the part browser where you can click on each line here and you will see a display of it will also highlight the part on the drawing. You can remove parts or you can add more parts if you want to. And for each part, you have some settings and information. So you will see that it changes when I click on these parts. So you can set the quantity, you can set a filler, which I will talk about later. You can set the rotation step. So this will rotate like 360 degrees, but you can set steps. Like you don't want it to rotate, you want it to rotate 180 degrees, and so on. You can allow mirrors. So if you want to mirror some parts, you can also force the mirror. And you can also set a priority. So if all of these parts would fill up these 4 sheets and then there would be some left over, you can set priority. So maybe this circle, you have a high priority on that. So you set the priority to highest. That means it will prioritize this circle in the nest. Let's just leave that to none at the moment. And you can set the color if you want to use common cuts on these or not. if you want to use holes, so you can say that I would like to nest inside this part or not. And the arrow with height. So that's some settings about each part. So you can also select, there's a select all button here. You can click on that and select all the parts, but you can also say from part 17 to part 23, I hold shift on the keyboard and click here. You can set that I want this priority to be high, and that will set high to all of these. Let's not do that again. So that's those two boxes. There are also an area over here which is more like a global settings for your nest. So you can save these profiles. So this is a common setting that I've used. You can set a default value. You can create your own settings, so you don't have to go in here and change these every time you want to make a nest. So let's use my common nest setting. And for each material that we're using, so now we're using a stainless steel standard. In the material database, you can set the part distance on the material. So I'm going to use by material here, but you can also override the part distance by changing this value. The start corner, we can click on this blue text here, and that's the start corner for the nest. So in this machine, our start corner is at the bottom left corner. We can click on this image and you can see that we can nest in different directions. But this is my preferred, often my preferred direction. We can mirror by part, yes or no. And fillers is also something I will take with filler right here. So if you have multiple tools, so if you have multiple jets on your machine, you can also nest with these tools. So for this machine, we have 2 tools, and the mode is dynamic. That means that the 2 jets can change the distance between them with a motor. You can also set a constant mode, and then you set the distance between each jet. And now to the common cut line. So we've activated the common cut line, and this is very important. We want to use, so this is pretty much the same as the part distance. We want to use the distance between the parts should be the same as the tool diameter, because a common cut is when you place 2 parts together and you cut between them only once. So you only want the width of the jet to be the distance between those parts. So use tool diameter. I use this almost every time. We can set a minimum length. So if we would have another circle around here and they would only touch each other for 1 millimeter, we would not assign a common cut between them. So the minimum length is 5 millimeters right now. And we can also optimize the common cut line with material, average, or time. I'll go with the average here. So, okay, those are some basic settings for the Autonest. Let's just nest this thing with multiple tools and common cut line. So what you see here is the color parts right here is for tool number 1. And this is for tool number 2. So this is basically just a mirror of the left side. And all the red lines are common cuts. So that will only be cut once between each part. I'll just stop this. So we have fill ratio is 86.4%, which is pretty good. And we have a lot of information about the nest right here. Let's just hit OK. And we close this. So what you see here is, well, these parts are still not nested then. So maybe we could have let this nest go on for a little bit longer and this would have jumped in there, but these are still to be cut, these parts. But let's focus on a sheet. Let's take this sheet, for example. Now we want to use common cut line to cut this. And then I'll head over to Cam. I won't use contour, but I will click on toolpath and go down to common. And common cut lines, well, we have 3 settings. Either you can cut part-wise, so you cut each part, or you can cut sheet-wise, and that means, well, it's most for rectangles, because you cut like in lines like this, and then you just horizontal and vertically. And you also have another for just rectangles, which are lines. So you want to use part-wise. We can use a pretty cool feature which is called trim to sheet. So if we place this just on the edge of the sheet here, we don't have to cut this part because this is the edge of the sheet, right? So we can set trim to sheet. That means it will only cut down here and leave this and go here again. We can also, on the partwise common cut line, set a gap. And a gap is essentially a bridge, which will leave a little tab on them so they won't fall in the tank. We can also, if we want to ignore holes or not, that means, do we want to place a toolpath in the holes or not? And if there is a separated part, let's say this part is not cut by common cut line, do we want to set a contour auto on those? And that can be a good thing. So with these settings, let's click OK. This thing here. Select these parts. And we can zoom in again and see that we have toolpaths on the internal holes. We have the external. And right here we have a common toolpath. So with that, we go to order, or we go to process actually. Select this here, enter. And all of these parts are common cut lines, the ones that doesn't have any color on them for some reason. We can simulate this if we want to. Enter. And let's start this, and we'll see that it cuts on both of the sides. Speed this up a little bit. Yeah, that's our nesting with common cut lines. There was one more thing in here. Let's go to nests, re-nests, just for this, and I'll select everything, and I'll just set the quantity to 1, and to not multiple tools, nest. Stop, okay. So, I'll re-nest this again. If we had a sheet that looked like this, we have this, there's an imaginary line here, which goes right here. And that line is called the front line. And we can set if we want to use fillers after front line. And that would actually, if we had enough filler parts, would fill this sheet. But if we don't activate the fillers after front line, it will just put fillers on this side. So let's find this part looks pretty good. Let's just set fillers 100, why not? And that means if there is space on the left side of the front line on this nest, add as many fillers as you can. Let's just change the direction to x-axis also. And yeah, let's nest these. So stop. Okay. So that put all of these parts to the left side of the front line. So this is fillers, guys. I think that's about it for this episode. As I said earlier, work your ass off. It pays off in the end, I promise you. Take care. Have a good day.